Today we're going to talk about using ablatives that don't have prepositions. Up until this point, we've had phrases like this one in aqua, where we get a preposition followed by the ablative, and we translate that as a prepositional phrase. There are going to be times when the ablative shows up but doesn't have this preposition. Those are special forms, and we're going to talk about those today. But first, let's look at this chart of endings that we have in Latin for each of the cases and each of the declensions so that we can move forward. The nominative, singular for the first person, is A. Plural is AE. For the second declension, our nominative for the singular is US. For the plural is I. Our third declension nominative does not have an established ending. The plural is ES. For the genitive case, our singular for the first declension is AE, and our plural is ARUM. For the second declension genitive singular, we have I. For the plural is ORUM. For the third declension singular, we have IS and UM as the plural. Dative endings for the first declension singular, AE. Plural is IS. For the second declension singular, we have O. For the second declension plural, we have IS. Third declension dative ending for the singular is I. Plural is IBUS. Accusative for the first declension singular, AM. Plural is AS. Second declension singular accusative is UM. The plural is OS. For the third declension, our singular accusative is EM, and the plural is ES. Now, the endings that we're going to be focused on today are the ablative endings. So we really need to kind of focus on these today. Ablative singular, the first declension is A. We're going to be seeing this a lot today. For the plural is IS. Second declension, singular ablative ending is O. And the plural ablative for the second declension is IS. Third declension, singular ablative is E. And the plural is IBUS. Now let's talk about some of these special cases where we don't get a preposition with the ablative. The first one is ablative of time. When we use an ablative that is a time word, like this nocte, or the hora, or the estate, or the deebus, or tempora, when we have a word that's associated with time, and we want to express the time when the action occurs, we don't have to use a preposition. We've seen this a few times already. The book just didn't really explain it to us. So if we look at the sentence that we have on the board, that should say Cornelia, not Cornelia. When we look at the sentence here, we have our subject Cornelia. She's walking in the fields, and then we have nocte here. Remember, that's our ablative ending for the third declension, and if I look up nox in the back of the book, it is definitely, because of that is, it is third declension. When I put that E there, it makes nocte ablative. So I have to ask myself, how do I want to translate this? There is no preposition that goes with it. I understand now that it is associated with time, so I'm going to translate it as a time word. Cornelia walks in the fields. The night is the one that's going to be translated. So I have to decide if I want to have her walking in the fields at night. I could translate it as at night, in the night, during the night. Any of these that have to do with time are fine. All of those would be correct. These phrases here, again, they would have macrons over those A's. I would translate this as in the seventh hour. For estate, we would have in the summer. During the summer would be fine as well. Tribus diebus, on the third day, or sorry, in 3 days. During the 3 days would be fine as well. Brevi tempore, in a brief moment. All of these are time words that we're translating without prepositions. And we just have to ask ourselves, how is that time word, nocte, how is it related to the action of the sentence? And again, any of those, at night, in the night, during the night, would be just fine. The big deal, though, is that we understand that there isn't going to be a preposition when we're expressing time when the action occurs. So the first one, ablative of time. We'll move to the next one, the ablative of means, or they sometimes called the ablative of instrument. The ablative of instrument or means is going to express what object the action is accomplished with. So in this first sentence here, we look at servum, it's accusative, so it's going to be our direct object. And we have verberat, that's our subject. Third person singular, so we're going to make a he, a she, or a it as the subject. The action is hits. The direct object is servum, so slave, he hits the slave. Now, the object that he uses to hit the slave is called an ablative of means. Baculo here ends in O, so it's an ablative. I know that because, well, it belongs to the second declension. Our second declension, singular ending for the ablative is O. So, by means of, the stick is the literal translation. We can also use the word with if it sounds better, and that's what's going to sound better here. So he hits the slave with the stick, or with a stick. Either one is fine. Sometimes it's going to sound better to use the word by instead of by means or with. In the second sentence here, we have davus, which is going to be our nominative. That's going to be our subject. So Davis. Gatum is accusative. It's going to be our direct object. A ripet is our verb. So Davis grabs, and then our accusative gatum grabs gata. And again, the literal translation here is by means of the tunic. Okay? That really is kind of an awkward phrase in English. So I'll try first the with. Davis grabs Gata with the tunic. That's really not helping me out either. Still kind of awkward. So I'm going to use the word by. Davis grabs Gata by the tunic. So the ablative of means, we can use by, we can use with, or we can use by means of to translate that ablative of means. Now what's the difference between the ablative of means and the ablative of time? Well, baculo is not a time word, neither is tunica. Those are actual objects. Because they're objects, we're going to use those as ablative of means. Looking at the ablative of manner, this is another one that will show up without a preposition. The ablative of manner will express in what manner the action is performed. If we look at the sentence here, we have Marcus as our subject. Our verb is the clamat, so Marcus is shouts. And then our ablative here is magna voca. Now we know that voca is in the ablative because we look it up, vox vocus, feminine voice, part of the third declension. Our third declension ablative singular ending is E. So we're dealing with an ablative. It's not a time word. Voice is not a time word. It's not an actual object like stick or like we saw with stick. It's something else. It's how the action is being done. It's the manner in which Marcus is shouting. So we're not going to use by means of. We're going to use in a loud voice. Now we've already had this sentence, so we know how to translate it already. But this in a loud voice is expressing the manner in which the action is performed. So when we have an expression of manner, we're going to use an ablative, and again, it's not going to have a preposition. Now this is all kind of overwhelming for us right now, so what I want to do is I want to go over a few examples. And again, to this point, we've used prepositions when we've had words that are in the ablative to express an object of a preposition or a prepositional phrase. Sometimes, though, we're going to have to translate phrases that are in the ablative without a preposition. Here we have footprints. So if I translate this as an ablative of means, what would I say? Well, I look at it, I know it's plural, I know it's ablative, I know that I'm trying to use means, so I would say by footprints. I could also use with footprints or by means of footprints to translate that into the ablative of means. Tunica, again, this is singular and ablative, so I can use by the toga, or tunic, I'm sorry, not toga. And once again, I'm going to be able to translate it as with the toga, or tunic, or by means of the tunic. If I translate something into the ablative of manner, like era, I'm expressing how or in what manner the action is taking place. So if someone does something era, they're doing it with anger. And I could also translate that as in anger as well. With magna loca, translate it as with a loud voice. And again, I could translate that as in a loud voice as well. Let's look at the ablative of time. If I have a time word, there are several ways to translate it. If I have brella tempora, and I translate it as in a brief moment or in a brief time, I could translate it several ways to make sense with the sentence. I could say for a brief time, during a brief time, at a brief time. Any of those are going to work out. Same thing for nocta. In the night, during the night, at night, those are going to all work. In the summer for estate, during the summer would work, for the summer would work. In 3 days for tribus days, for 3 days. Any of those are going to work. Now, here's the key. If I look at these words, ablative means are objects. They're going to be nouns that can be used to accomplish a task. Manner, a lot of times, are going to be emotions, and sometimes they're not going to be emotions, but they're going to be the manner with which something is done. Can be, voice in a loud voice, with a stern look. Those kind of things, those nouns that you can't really touch, are going to be used as manner. Ablative of time, well, those are time words. Tempora is time. Nocte is a time. Estate is a time. And dies is a time. Those are all time-related words, and that's how I can pick them up as ablative of times. Let's translate a few of these sentences. I'll give you guys a chance to pause the video and try to translate these sentences, these 3 sentences, and decide which ablative that you're dealing with in each of these cases. One of these sentences is an ablative of time, one of these sentences is an ablative of manner, and one of these sentences is an ablative of means. So you guys translate these 3 sentences and decide which ablative you're dealing with. Pause the video now. All right, I'll go over these 3 sentences with you. Hopefully you did a good job translating them. As I go through the first sentence, the first thing I'm going to recognize is that we is the subject of my sentence. That moose at the end of find is going to be we as the subject. We find? What did we find? Well, I need an accusative. Here is my accusative. We find footprints. The inwea is a prepositional phrase that does have a preposition. In the vineyard. And then I have the word dog here. From canis. Third declension. The E signifies that it's ablative. Is this an object that I can touch? Is it a physical object? The answer is yes. So I'm going to have an ablative with the dog. I'm going to have an ablative of means. An object that I can use to accomplish a task is going to be ablative of means. Looking at the next sentence. Nocte is an ablative by itself. Ego looks like it's going to be my subject. Panem is accusative. Latro. Latrari. Non. Latrari is, of course, my infinitive. Cupio, my verb. That's telling me that I is the subject. What am I doing? I want. That's the verb, cupio. I want to wash. Not sure latra belongs in here. I want to wash. What am I going to wash? Well, there's my direct object, the dog. And then I have that ablative nocte without a preposition. In the night. Again, nocte is a time word, and I'm sorry about that latra. That kind of probably messed you up. Nocte is a time word, so I translate it as an ablative of time. All right, our third sentence. Again, have a vocative. I'm direct addressing the servants. That's accusative and plural. Ira is an ablative without a preposition, and portatus says that you is the subject of that particular quotation. So I have slaves. And then it's a question, so did you carry the trunks and then in anger is going to be our ablative of manner. And then, of course, we'll finish that up with father shouts. That concludes using ablatives without prepositions, and hopefully you'll find in the exercises that you're doing today, hopefully you'll find it a little bit easier to translate these guys. So good luck.